From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Sweeney Gray. The family of the murdered Argentine activist Santiago Maldonado has condemned the judiciary's decision to end all investigations regarding his case. Officials said Maldonado drowned, but his family says he was the victim of a forced disappearance. Our correspondent Edgardo Esteban has the details.
The family of Santiago Maldonado gave a press conference alongside human rights organizations and social movements to reject the resolution of Judge Gustavo Yeral, who decided to close the investigations into the case of Santiago Maldonado. Santiago's body was found near Riverbank in October 2017 after he had disappeared for more than 70 days. His mother said the judge is caving to the government's pressure and insisted the family only wants to know the truth about what happened to him.
And still in Argentina, women are protesting against the court's decision on the rape and murder of a teenager, Lucia Perez. Outrage spread in the country as the three accused were found not guilty on November 28. The court said their guilt could not be proven despite the fact that they offered drugs to Lucia and took her to their home. Feminist groups say this is additional proof of the lack of a gender perspective within the judiciary. And earlier we spoke to the Argentinian journalist and activist Jimena Shinka. She joined us to talk about this case and also the feminist movements around Latin America and the world.
Ni Una Menos was born in 2015 in Argentina because of another femicide against a teenager named Chiara Paez, and that is the movement is growing around the continent and around the world. And that's why we are thinking that this is not going to stop. It is going to grow, no matter if judicial authorities or the government are not taking enough policies to protect women in our countries.
A Spanish court has ordered the 5 members of the Wolf Pack to 9 years in prison for sexual abuse. All over Spain, demonstrators took to the streets to reject what they say was a far too lenient sentence. The men were accused of assaulting and gang raping an 18-year-old in 2016 during the San Fermin festival. 2 out of the 5 judges said the group had to be condemned for sexual aggression and face 14 years in prison. Now, to discuss the Wolfpack sentencing and the women's protest it has sparked, we're being joined live by Ana Cardenas in Navarro. She's a feminist activist and a member of the 8M organization. Thank you, Ana, so much for joining us. Can you explain to our viewers why women are protesting this 9-year sentence?
Well, we are not protesting here because of the penalty itself, but because the sentence of the 5 men are guilty of sexual abuse, not rape. This is lesser, not the number of years. No, it's not in what we discuss or what we protest, but there's no. I'm sorry. There's no there's no rape in the sentence.
Right. So, Ana, could you tell us why people are so interested in this case?
Well, the case has been very media repercussion, but it's not an isolated case. It happens a lot and worldwide. It's very important in Spain. It's like we can't stand it anymore.
And Ana, finally, were all the members of the appeal court men, and how important it is to incorporate a gendered perspective into the workings of the courts in Spain?
well, it's very important and it's also urgent that we need to live in a society free of sexism and violence, and we need that our public servants they have perspective gender training to treat us with equality.
Thank you so much, Anna, for joining us. We really appreciate your perspective on this. Women's organizations have protested against macho fascism in politics at the COP24 in Poland. One organization called the Woman Gender Constituency Group used a performance to protest against macho culture. They say the conservative trend is affecting people around the world and call for women to rise up against it. World leaders have met in Poland for the 2-week-long climate change summit.
Because we're very much concerned that in these halls and as it is all over the world, we see the rise of macho fascism, right-wing politicians, right-wing governments.
And earlier we were joined by our correspondent, Watmore Kokoba, who gave us some details about the COP24 summit negotiations are unfolding in Poland.
Other countries are saying, especially countries that produce coal, like Poland here where the COP24 is happening, are saying if there is to be just transition, there has to be some consideration into some social issues like employment. There has to be some consideration into some social and economic issues so that the transition, it doesn't have to affect the lives of people. So people are still debating and trying to come up with a way of making sure that if this is going to happen like sustainably, there has to be some ways of making sure that it does not affect the lives of people who are employed especially in the core sector.
Mexican researchers are interested in the migratory phenomenon that has led thousands to seek asylum at the border in northern Mexico.
Mexican social experts have been researching the Central American exodus for 16 days. After traveling over 4,000 kilometers, migrants established themselves in Tijuana to apply for asylum in the United States.
Why does this number stand out, if in fact it represents a very small fraction of the people who travel through Mexico? I would answer that is because they are visible for the first time.
Researchers are trying to answer questions about the society lived in by the thousands of Central Americans at the border.
There's no proof that crime has risen because of these people. On the contrary, we see that this group has a lot of potential to integrate into this city's productive life.
Analyzing decisions taken before the migratory phenomenon, they are denouncing the lack of planning by the authorities.
A lot of actions are being improvised rather than planned. There is more capacity to house people in the Barretal, but that doesn't mean conditions are more dignified.
The xenophobic behavior expressed by a minority in Tijuana is also being studied. There is a specific cause behind it.
These demonstrations of rejection shows an inability on the part of the government to solve this issue.
Over 5,000 migrants are currently housed in shelters across Tijuana. They left their country seeking a dignified life. And today, they have to face the decisions of a frontier government that is just improvising.
Mexico will establish a National Institute for Indigenous People for the promotion of indigenous rights. President Andres Manuel López Obrador has announced López Obrador's campaign promises of supporting indigenous people in Mexico. They still suffer from discrimination and statistically more poverty. We'll take a short break now. More news in a minute. Welcome back. The Bolivian Electoral Court has allowed Evo Morales to run for president. Morales can now be elected in his party's primary elections ahead of presidential polls scheduled for 2019. The current president could be re-elected for the 4th time in a row. The Bolivian Vice President Alvarado Garcia Linero will also be able to stand on Morales' ticket. Our correspondent Freddie Morales tells us more.
Bolivian President Evo Morales and his Vice President Álvaro García Linera have been enabled by the Supreme Electoral Court to run in primary elections next January 27th and in the general elections on October 2019. The authorization was passed by 4 of the 6 votes from the Electoral Court that has also allowed other 7 political groups to run. This court's decision was taken 2 days before the deadline set by the electoral schedule and surprised a sector of the political opposition that is organizing protests across the country against Morales and Linera's candidacy. The opposition has announced it will continue to protest and will call for a 24-hour strike organized by civic institutions, besides a demonstration in La Paz and also a vigil outside the electoral court. Opposition candidates believe this authorization marks a blow to democracy. Meanwhile, members from Morales' party celebrate their leaders have been allowed by the Electoral Court to participate. They say the Electoral Court has given Bolivia's people the choice on the future government for Bolivia.
The Colombian National Electoral Council has said it will investigate Senator Gustavo Petro because of a video scandal. Footage has been released showing Petro receiving money, which the senator admitted he received in 2005, but he says he did not commit a crime. Petro says the video seeks to end his political career and silence the Odebrecht corruption scandal and the related investigations in Colombia. The Nobel Peace Prize winner Adolfo Perez Esquivel has reached out to the Ecuadorian government because of his serious concern for the health of the former Vice President Jorge Glass. The Argentinian activist has sent a letter to President Lenin Moreno sharing his concern. Esquivel says the Ecuadorian government has a duty to take care of the former Vice President. Glass is in prison facing charges of corruption and has been on a hunger strike for more than 40 days. Cuba's telecommunications company Seca, will be releasing 4 mobile data packages on Thursday. This will be the first time in 5 years that Cubans will have access to internet outside of public Wi-Fi areas in parks around the island. President Miguel Diaz-Canel championed greater connectivity to boost the economy and enable Cuba to better defend its revolution online. CARICOM leaders have signed a declaration to move towards full free movement in a single market economy within the next 3 years. One of several resolutions passed during the 18th Special CARICOM Summit in Trinidad, which wrapped up on Tuesday. CARICOM leaders also agreed to expand the categories of skilled workers free to move within the region. There was also consensus on Haiti's full integration by 2020.
We consider the implementation plan for Haiti's full participation in the CSME, and we welcome the assistance that that country will receive from the European Development Fund in their efforts to become compliant with the measures to ensure that they can participate in the CSME.
We are cognizant that there is about $47 billion in savings within the community, and that we need to find a way of unlocking those savings such that our businesses and our governments can have access to affordable capital, to borrow at affordable rates, while at the same time giving our citizens and companies better options for greater returns on their money than they're currently getting from keeping that money in savings accounts.
Meanwhile, Jamaica's unemployment rate is currently at a record low, while joblessness among the youth has seen a significant decline. Prime Minister Andrew Holness made the announcement at an Action 2008 forum on the island.
2018, July, we saw the lowest reported unemployment rate, 8.4%. Means we would have had the highest number of Jamaicans employed in the history of Jamaica. In particular, youth unemployment declined by 5.3% to now be at 22.2%. These are very encouraging figures.
The Caribbean island of Nevis has received a cash injection to help improve the delivery of its dialysis services. Taiwan has donated $167,000. The funding is intended for the procurement of hemodialysis machines and water systems. This means that patients will no longer have to travel to the sister isle of St. Kitts for treatment. The first baby has been born from a uterus transplanted from a dead person in Brazil. The healthy baby girl was born in Sao Paulo after her 32-year-old mother received a uterus transplant from a woman who had died from bleeding in her brain. The mother, who was born without a uterus, underwent a 10-hour operation followed by fertility treatment. There have been 39 uterus transplants from live donors, but the 10 previous transplants from a dead donor had failed. In sports, female players of the Colombian team that won the Libertadores Cup tournament are calling for more support for women's football. Yoreli Rincon from the Atletico Huila team criticized the fact that the $55,000 prize was about to be used for the men teams, which plays in the first division of the Colombian league. But after the controversy, the club changed its mind. Still, female players are calling for more promotion and better contracts in their league. The Colombian long and triple jump athlete Catherine Imba Gwen has been chosen as the Athlete of the Year 2018 by the International Association of Athletics Federations. At a ceremony held in Monaco, she became the first South American athlete to win the award. Interview after the event, she said she was filled with joy and dedicated the award to her family and to her country. We take a short break now. World News is next. Welcome back. Turkey has issued arrest warrants for 2 men close to the Saudi crown prince over the killing of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Turkish state media says Ahmad al-Asiri and Saud al-Khatini are said to be charged with deliberately killing with monstrous feeling or causing torment. A court made the move after prosecutors argued their case against the duo. The men were described as having helped plan the murder. The United Nations has expressed its concerns over Denmark's plan to transfer foreign criminals to a tiny island used for animal disease research. The UN's human rights chief, Michelle Bachelet, said housing up to 100 criminals on the island would further increase their vulnerability. The migrants cannot be deported back to their home country because they're at risk of torture or execution. The Danish parliament is set to vote on the proposal later this month.
Sometimes there are difficulties encountered in returning migrants to their countries of origins when they're not accepted as a refugee. But they should be addressed in a safe and human way, manner, but on the basis of course, individual assessment, and not in ways that will increase harm, which this plan is very likely to do, because we have seen the negative impact of such policies of isolation and should not replicate these policies.
A campaign has been launched in Spain to end the discrimination against Romani people and to highlight their influence in the country's culture.
Romani people are requesting
Mírame a los ojos.
For society to learn about the historical influence they have had on Spanish culture, from literature to politics.
It is still very necessary to raise awareness about all the contributions we have made. They are still unknown.
This is a chapter that has been erased from history books.
Una lección que nunca aprendiste porque nunca te la enseñaron.
A campaign is highlighting in a book and a video all those forgotten names in the Romani community and the anecdotes that were never told. The goal is to understand the Romani culture.
The lack of knowledge generates prejudice, and prejudice generates distrust. So we want to end with these misconceptions by sharing information so that we can all live together in equality.
The Romani People Association launched the campaign. They say there is still a lot to do for the Romani community to be included in society, although a lot of progress has been made in the last years in contrast to other European countries.
There are governments that are spreading messages against the Romani people, racist messages. This is something we worry about.
But to fight racism, information is key.
We need to take our history to schools. We are already working on that. We need to involve business and companies. We need society to be involved in this fight of equality.
This campaign is aimed at ending with discrimination and the obstacles the Romani community has faced for the last 6 centuries.
UK Prime Minister Theresa May is facing a possible defeat in next Tuesday's final Brexit deal vote. Our correspondent in London, Pablo Navarrete, explains.
A day after British MPs voted to find the UK government in contempt of Parliament, the government reluctantly published the legal basis for the Brexit agreement that it had been withholding up to now, and which caused this vote of censure by the British MPs. In a 6-page document released today, Wednesday, the British Attorney General Geoffrey Cox conceded that the issue of the Irish backstop, the prevention of a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, could trap the UK in a repeated and protracted series of negotiations. Now, the release of this information is likely to inflame the pro-Brexit MPs who have called the deal signed by the May government and the European Union a betrayal, essentially, of Britain leaving the EU, because it says it concedes far too much to the EU and gives them too much power over the terms of Britain's exit, which should have been has to be done by the 29th of March. So Theresa May is currently trying to sell her deal effectively to MPs and to the nation, and on Tuesday the 11th of December the Parliament will vote on this deal. Now, it currently looks like Parliament will reject the deal, and the release of this information today is likely to inflame further those on the Brexit side of her party who are angry with her and with the deal. So it's basically, it is not looking good for Theresa May's ability to pass this deal on Tuesday the 11th of December, which is likely, and the fact that it won't be passed is likely to plunge her government into a further crisis. So these are the latest developments in the Brexit deal negotiations in Parliament.
A court in France has approved the extradition of the brother of the former president of Burkina Faso, Blaise Compaoré, to face prosecution in his home country over the murder of a journalist 20 years ago. Francois Compaoré is accused of ordering the killing of the investigative journalist Norbert Zongo and 3 of his companions, whose burnt bodies were found in an abandoned car. At the time of his murder, Zongo had been investigating the death of Compaoré's former driver. Young people in Nepal have created a map of the Dead Sea using plastic bags. Their goal is to set a new international record and raise awareness of plastic pollution in the world's oceans. Volunteers tied 100,000 used plastic bags of different colors to a 20-meter-long metal grid shaped like the Dead Sea. The slogan for the record attempt was "One Dead Sea is enough for us." And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesioenglish.net. And join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesio English, I'm Sweeney Gray. Thank you for watching.